you could actually tip this economy into recession. So I just want to say, you know what's worse than high inflation and low unemployment? It's high inflation and a recession with millions of people out of work. And I hope you'll reconsider that before you drive this economy off a cliff. I said he was a dangerous man to have in this position.
Jerome Powell, a man the majority of America may be unfamiliar with.
That was the so-called brilliant talking heads who told you we were never going to get out of the bear market. We hold in contempt those who thought Jay Powell was an idiot, either because they were stupid or talking their own book.
You know, it's so uncertain right now. In my view, the least unlikely case is that we do find our way to better balance without a really severe downturn.
Unlike many of these stooges, I actually know Jay, and I recognize that he's a practical, no-nonsense, non-political, get-the-job-done person who doesn't want to throw people out of work and doesn't want to make your money worth less.
But nevertheless, a man who affects every last single one of us who live in America. Jerome Powell, a man who has the power to inflict pain on the economy for the next several years, even if this very well could wreak havoc on the American economy.
This is the point I've been trying to make all along. Jerome Powell has said that all he wants to do is lighten regulations on the banks. I opposed him as chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank precisely for that reason. I said he was a dangerous man to have in this position.
Since early last year, the FOMC has significantly tightened the stance of monetary policy. Today, we took another step by raising our policy interest rate a 1/4 percentage point.
My faith in him helped us to be non-ideological or neutral and kept us from the false dichotomy of soft or hard landing as this year went on, to the point where we think that we could be in for a no landing scenario. No landing at all. Just think positive. The man isn't piloting an airplane for heaven's sake. He's trying to negotiate an economy that's pumped up by federal stimulus while sagging from higher rates. If you didn't believe in Jay, this train left you thousands of points ago. We did, and we've been rewarded. We still believe in Jay.
The president said he thinks the Fed is the biggest risk to the economy because it's hiking rates too quickly.
Past hour, we've heard from President Donald Trump. He's been very vocal about monetary policy. He's been very vocal about Jerome Powell. He hits on tariffs, trade, and doubled down on his attack on Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
First, an issue for Americans all over the country, feeling the pinch over food prices. The cost of groceries increased nearly 12% in the past year, and prices for fresh produce remain high.
The decisions that have been made and will be made by Jerome Powell could alter America and global markets for the foreseeable future.
I think there's a significant probability that there will be a downturn as well, though, but it's not to me the most likely case.
That's the hard landing scenario.
Or just this, I wasn't even thinking of hard landing. I was thinking of even a recession. To me, it's not the most likely case, but it's certainly possible. And of course, many forecasters do predict that.
It's hard to imagine this is how 2020 started. But across the world, dozens were falling ill with a mysterious virus that would ultimately change life as we know it.
Chinese health authorities are still working to identify the virus behind a pneumonia outbreak in the central city of Wuhan.
At least 59 people are believed to have been sickened by the new virus.
Tonight, U.S. airports on high alert, screening passengers for symptoms of a deadly new virus.
I'm very concerned. Now that you brought it to my attention, I'll stay away from most people wearing masks.
The global pandemic was the first major test for the current Federal Treasury Administration. But this next test could very well define Jerome Powell's career and legacy. This isn't the first time a federal chairman has faced a possible career-defining moment, such as the 70s Paul Volcker, or Alan Greenspan, the man who knew in the 90s, or Bernard Bernanke during the 2008 financial crisis. All these moments were huge to America. Some of the most career-defining moments in monetary history. Mr. Powell is tasked with the tough and almost impossible task of leading America out of high inflation to the desired goal of...
My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. We understand the hardship that high inflation is causing, and we remain strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve. Without price stability, the economy doesn't work for anyone. In particular, without price stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Since early last year, the FOMC has significantly tightened the stance of monetary policy. Today, we took another step by raising our policy interest rate a 1/4 percentage point, and we are continuing to reduce our securities holdings at a brisk pace. We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening have yet to be felt. Looking ahead, we will continue to take a data-dependent approach in determining the extent of additional policy firming that may be appropriate.
This next challenge, next act, right or wrong, will be a career-defining move.
In an interview this time with the Wall Street Journal, the president said he thinks the Fed is the biggest risk to the economy. Hiking rates. And this isn't the first time he said this. This is echoing his recent comments. He said he's unhappy with the Fed because Obama had 0 interest rates. President Trump also took aim at Fed Chair Jay Powell. He said he thought that Powell was a low interest rate guy. The president said every time we do something great, he raises interest rates.
On the House phone, everyone. But done to 3 a.m. that has
things are going well.
What I will point out is that in his comments to the journal, they should
every president likes lower
rates. Every president likes lower rates. Nobody likes to have higher rates. Despite all of this talk about Powell hands off policy,
it wasn't as if
it's been very recently
What's the largest
more people.
Which you knew was going to be this answer.
We're throwing people behind the curve to where.
But you're right, it wasn't baiting.
The year is 2020, the month is March, and in a small area of China is a place called Wuhan.
Authorities are still working to identify the virus behind a pneumonia outbreak in the central city of Wuhan,
which unfortunately would become globally infamous for the wrong reasons. Wuhan is where this story begins. These next several weeks in March 2020, something nefarious was brewing. This mystery illness, which initially was coined the Wuhan virus.
Since the pandemic began last year, the whole United Kingdom has been engaged in a great national effort to fight COVID.
In responding to the sudden outbreak of COVID-19, we put the people and their lives above all else.
We've had other strains come across. As a matter of fact, from the original strains in Wuhan, the strain now is completely different, even the one dominant here in the United States.
Immediately, things started to fall apart in the American stock market with the fall of the NASDAQ, S&P 500, along with the Dow Jones.
Historic losses, the Dow falling almost 3,000 points. That is the biggest one-day point drop of all time.
The Federal Reserve, America's economic watchdog, would make key decisions to stop the global contagion from spreading to America, figuratively speaking, in regards to the economy.
Don't be alarmed by what's going on there, but certainly be aware by what's going on there. And by that, what he means is right now, these are projections. These are estimates of what's happening and how infective this strain is. We've had other strains come across. As a matter of fact, from the original strains in Wuhan, the strain now is completely different, even the one dominant here in the United States. As far as the banning travel, to a certain extent, it's almost like closing the barn doors after the horse has already gotten out.
The Federal Reserve is a central reserve bank of America. Think of it like this. It's the motherboard for all banks in America. The Federal Reserve has two main objectives, and that's...
And I have always felt, as you well know, that getting the economy on a sustainable growth path goes hand in hand with the necessity for financial stability and a non-inflationary path. And in the most general terms, it's the job of the Federal Reserve and the job of all of us to take the actions that are necessary to achieve that.
We're in the midst of a once-in-a-century credit tsunami. Central banks and governments are being required to take unprecedented measures. Given the financial damage to date, I cannot see how we can avoid a significant rise in layoffs and unemployment. To avoid severe retrenchment, banks and other financial intermediaries will need the support that only the substitution of sovereign credit for private credit can bestow. The $700 billion Troubled Assets Relief Program is adequate to serve that need.
Over and over again, ideology trumped governance. Our regulators became enablers rather than enforcers.
COVID-19 was spreading like a wildfire across the global landscape. Something needed to be done to prevent serious damage being done to the economic system, not just in America, but abroad.
As I speak to you tonight, our hospitals are under more pressure from COVID than at any time since the start of the pandemic. On the 29th of December, more than 80,000 people tested positive for COVID across the UK, with most of the country already under extreme measures.
मैं आज एक बार फिर कोरोना वैश्विक महामारी पर
and tenaciously pursue a dynamic zero-COVID policy in launching an all-out people's war to stop the spread of the virus.
It's clear that we need to do more together. In England, we must therefore go into a national lockdown which is tough enough to contain this variant.
The Federal Reserve took swift action by unleashing quantitative easing, better known as QE, into the system. The controversial QE was influential in the 2008 financial crisis because it negated economic damage. So the Feds hit the QE button by lowering the interest rate to zero. Buying government bonds to stimulate the economy, promote borrowing, and stifle the growth of a recession.
While the primary response to this challenge will come from our healthcare providers and policy experts, economic policymakers must do what we can to ease hardship caused by the disruptions to the economy and to support a swift return to normal once they have passed. The Federal Reserve's role is guided by our mandate from Congress to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people, along with our responsibilities to promote the stability of the financial system. Today, we reduced the target range for our policy interest rate by 1 percentage point, bringing it close to zero, and said that we expect to maintain the rate at this level until we're confident that the economy has weathered recent events and is on track to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals.
These actions had dual results. The decision to lower rates had positive and negative consequences to it. For the everyday American, it was great because price stability kept things intact. No jobs were lost, unemployment was down, but on the flip side of the coin, Jerome Powell was able to save America from a major recession, but the end result had a delayed response. Not only was Jerome Powell facing a recession, along the way came an unexpected twist.
And thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, it is clear that Russia's war with Ukraine has started. President Biden specifically calling Russia's military moves an invasion. And as promised, the president and our European allies leveled tough new economic sanctions against Russia's financial institutions and oligarchs that are in Putin's inner circle.
Things moderated for a little over a year before Russia invaded Ukraine. Chair Powell has faced many challenges throughout his term, but his biggest challenge has been to restore price stability to the U.S. economy for the benefit of the American people.
Well, today's action sent markets into a free fall, with all three major indexes falling more than 1% and sending the S&P into correction territory.
Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries on territory that belong to his neighbors? This is a flagrant violation of international law.
Many experts believe Jerome Powell waited much too late to rescind QE. The culmination of stimulus money, 0% interest rates, which made borrowing money easy and unnatural, and has left America with high inflation and anything but price stability, almost reminiscent of the past.
We need to have a thorough understanding of what caused
the current financial crisis and how the federal government responded. Unfortunately, much of what the Fed, the Treasury, and other agencies did in these transactions remain shrouded in secrecy. It's time to yank the shroud off the Feds and shine some light on these events.
Last 28 months of Obama's presidency, he averaged more new jobs than your first 28 months.
That's because he started off with such a bad base.
Okay.
I mean, he hit.
But is it not a continuation?
Yeah, but Chuck, you have to understand, nobody was working. The whole place was a disaster, and I'd never take that away.
Okay.
But it's very easy.
All right.
Because when that turned around, they pumped a tremendous amount of money into the economy. He also had a Federal Reserve person who kept the interest rates low. I don't. I don't
Sounds
have
like
that
you do
privilege.
now. Do you feel like you
no,
have?
No, no.
Do you feel like you have sent?
He raised them far too fast.
The threat.
He raised them far too fast.
Your threat to demote him. Do you think that's had an impact?
I didn't ever threaten to demote him.
There's been some talk that you might demote him to the number 2 slot.
I'd be able to do that if I wanted, but I haven't suggested that.
That's not a threat. That's just a reminder that you can.
No, I have the right to do that, but I haven't said that. What he's done is $50 billion a month in quantitative tightening. That's ridiculous. What he's done is he raised interest rates too fast.
You worry he's going to hurt your re-election?
But I'm not happy with his actions. No, I don't think he's done a good job. Obama had somebody that kept the rates very low. I had somebody that raised the rates very rapidly, too much. He made a mistake.
3.7% is a low unemployment rate, but to call something hot, you need to see some heat. Median incomes and lower incomes have stagnated compared to those at the high end.
Mr. Chairman, if you got a call from the president today or tomorrow, and he said, "I'm firing you, pack up, it's time to go," what would you do?
Well, of course I would not do that.
I can't hear you.
Nobody ever heard of him before, and now I made him.
My answer would be no.
And you would not pack up and you would not leave?
No, ma'am.
Because you think the president doesn't have the authority? Is that why you would not leave?
I have, I've kind of said what I've intended to say on the subject, and what I've said is that the law clearly gives me a 4-year term.
How tough he is, okay? Let him show how tough he is. He's not doing a good job.